We're busier than we've ever been, largely because of the women's movement and Me Too, and Niki is, on the leading, her artwork and her place in the world put her right at the leading edge of that movement.
Moi, je m'appelle Niki et je fais des sculptures monumentales.
She was born in 1930 in France. Her father was a French banker, actually was from a very wealthy banking family in France. He married a U.S. citizen.
I'm not the person who can change society except through showing some kind of vision of these happy, joyous, domineering women. That's all that I can do.
She was a staunch feminist. Well, for instance, somebody told her once that, her artwork was as good as a man's. And she said, no, it's not as good as a man's. It's made by a woman. It's completely different. She was very strong in her belief that, she wanted to be a woman first and an artist second. And that her art was the art of a woman, and she wanted to be one of the first great women artists. If you look at her art, it's all curves. There aren't any right angles and sharp angles in her art. And that's all because it's a woman making it. It had the women's sensibility.
But it's incredible that women, as much as, they're working today, they've emancipated themselves, and yet politically we play no role, really. We don't decide anything. And women are much more, they're natural, biologically, they're much more, not only more conservative, but they care about, we feed our children. We have completely other roles and possibilities. And that's why I really think that women could administrate this world much better. Black power and women power, they get together,
fantastic,
take over everything. That's the solution. A world of, a new world of joy.
She had a very difficult upbringing and a very difficult relationship with her parents.
My problem is creating now, it's creating beauty, it's creating something. It's creating something which has to do with you, which has to do with now, which has to do with bombs and everything exploding and the end of the world.
There was a lot of anger in her early works. In fact, she was first famous for what were called shooting paintings. She would create a sculpture of different, things, maybe a church, and she would put pockets of paint behind the plaster. She would make it out of chicken wire and plaster, and there'd be pockets of paint in little bags behind it. She knew where those pockets were. Then she would put that up on the wall, and then she would have herself or her husband Jean Tinguely or other artists take a rifle and shoot at the work. So you see the violence in that, the anger coming out. And they would shoot and hit these pockets of paint, and the paint would run down and create in some cases, a very beautiful work of art. She worked with polyester, they call it in France. We call it resins, and it's similar to the stuff that surfboards are made out of. The foam core and then the resin exterior to protect it. Well, that's what a lot of her sculptures were made of early in her life. And they didn't know back then that breathing the fumes of resin was burning the lining of your lungs. Toward the latter part of her life, she had terrible problems with her lungs, health issues. And Niki's dictate to me was, I want you to keep my art alive. And to do that, we formed a foundation into which she put all of her art. Upon her death, all of her art automatically transferred into this foundation, which is called the Niki Charitable Art Foundation.